You're clear to go.
Great. This is a meeting of the South Kingstown Sustainability Committee. It is Monday, October 19th. It is 6:06 p.m. I am Angela Twoney. I'm here. I'm going to go through and say names, and if you could just say present, that's probably the cleanest way to do it. Mark Kravitz.
Present.
Mark DeMornville.
Present.
Chris Hubbard.
Present.
Jim Norman.
Present.
And Tony Silver.
Present.
Great. And Mark Russo as staff. And we have some guests too.
Yes, so Mark Russo, I'm the facility superintendent for the town of South Kingstown. And we also have Kathy Stanley as a panelist today, and then Mike Murner as well.
Great. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
First order of business is to approve the minutes from the August meeting, which feels like forever ago.
I just have two comments on the minutes.
Sure.
So if we could just add, at the conclusion of Ms. Toll's presentation, I just wanted to recognize, I expressed recognition for her effort in coordinating all of the items related to the sustainability elements of the buildings committee. So if we could include that in the minutes, I'd appreciate that, Mark.
In the minutes moving forward.
No, this is in just making a correction to the August August minutes, just making that recognition of all of her efforts at what she had done up to that point. That's all. Just wanted to recognize that and include that on the record.
Okay.
And then secondly, on item 6C, solid waste and composting, I believe we did discuss, at least in my notes, we discussed that Jim and Chris Hubbard and myself would talk in between meetings about coordinating a discussion for composting at future meetings. And I just wanted to include that in the record as well.
Okay.
Because that will be referenced today. Other than that, looks good from my perspective. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, good.
Can we approve these with an asterisk?
I would say if I have to make changes, then no, I wouldn't approve them now. I'd approve them next
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
So we'll be at Thanksgiving time at that point.
Jesus.
Right.
Okay, so we will move the approval of minutes for the August meeting to the November meeting.
Okay.
Moving along, agenda item 4, correspondence and public comment with a note here from Patrick Roche from Good Energy. It sounds like they have submitted our application to the PUC and we should be getting approval around Thanksgiving time.
Yeah, I resent that to you all this last couple weeks, last week.
Yep.
So yeah, there's nothing else has come up on that at all. So
Yeah, and I'll assume that they will reach out to us if they need support. But
Okay.
otherwise, that's good news. Are there any comments from the public? Is there anybody in the waiting room or anything, Mark, like that? I
let
just
me
wanna check.
check. Well, you can check too, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, there's nobody sitting there.
okay. Any other correspondence we want to talk about that's not on
Just
the agenda?
if you were to jump up to number 5, the only correspondence I sent to you that Melissa sent to me today,
Right.
all of the sustainability stuff that had to do with the school project. So we can talk about that in a minute, but
Okay,
she's not going to make this meeting because she has a building committee right now. So,
got it.
which I should
We
be there
got the
too,
boot.
but that's okay. You know, the state's preference.
Well,
There
thank
you
you,
are,
Mark.
Tony.
Muted.
I didn't realize that my little privacy screen was over until I just saw the plain lake behind me. Now I'll just jump in it real quick.
And I just wanted to say, Mark, I'm glad you have your priorities straight. You're in the right meeting. I'm
Yeah,
glad you're here
seriously.
with us.
I agree.
All right.
Then I guess we'll just jump down to number 5, the school building committee sustainability update.
So I forwarded all that information to you guys, probably 2 o'clock this afternoon or whatever it was. And Melissa had just asked me to let you know that the building committee voted to wait until a February application for the stage 2. And the school committee voted to do it in September, but then the town council said, no, we're gonna wait till February because all the information's not here. So we're looking at a February 15th, I guess it is, submission for the stage 2 application. So we'll have some time to work on the sustainability parts of that project. So the stuff that she sent you guys, if you could just go through it, if you have questions, and then maybe next meeting, the 2 won't cross, and then she'll be here. So
Has anybody tried to access the document that she listed, the sections she advised us to look at? I clicked on the link that she sent and I couldn't find it. Tony,
I
you
did.
said, oh, you did, Jim?
Yeah, I went through all the pages.
How do you access it? Is there a pretty obvious link? I didn't see it.
Yeah,
It didn't
like
seem obvious.
Part way down, there's I think it's a yellow highlighted link that you tap on that, and then
Okay, I'll go and look at it again. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
It's okay to contact Melissa directly if we can't find that.
sure,
Okay, thank you.
should have her email, I would think.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
yeah, Mark, just to clarify, we'll have that discussion in this committee next time we meet, right? So we'll be able to prepare for our comments and have a discussion on that in this committee, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So we have, basically what you're saying is we have up until mid-February to submit our comments.
Well, I think that
Or
mid-February is when they want to
prior to
submit. I
that.
think they want to wait till the last possible second.
right.
So I'm thinking probably
That's just something I
December, January. Yeah, you should have your stuff
Okay,
in order.
Well, yeah, maybe we could make that decision now, as far as when, like, this is my first homework with this committee. Like, as far as being prepared for that discussion, maybe November or December? Are we meeting in December? We are, right?
yeah.
I imagine so. Yeah, I think we should all try to review it between now and November and be ready to talk about it next month.
With
And
with guests here tonight, could we move on to them and then possibly talk about this after?
yeah, I haven't had a chance to review it because it's dense and got it 6 hours ago.
Right, and I think that if you guys looked at it for the next couple of weeks, and then in November, we can hit Melissa up on some things, and then really get into it in December with your recommendations to the school building committee. That way they can make edits if they have to in January and be ready to go.
Okay. Is that good
Does
with
that sound all
everybody?
right?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Then we will move on. Agenda item 6, Shared Energy Manager Program with Kathy Stanley, our guest.
Yes, Kathy Stanley was hired by, is it Office of Energy Resources?
Yes.
And she is a energy manager for not only South Kingstown, but you have to forgive me, I think it's 4 other communities.
There's a total of 5 right now.
5, right. And because I guess they found that a lot of the communities didn't have the time or the manpower to track energy use, where the projects are being done, where the money's being spent, the best way. So there was a grant program that came out, and they hired Kathy through an extensive interview process, if I know my OERs correctly. And she has been working with me, I think, since March.
Late July.
Yeah, late July, okay. It just all melds together after a while. So yeah, I'll introduce Kathy Stanley. She's from Energy Advocates where are you in now? Bridgewater?
Easton, Mass.
Easton, Mass. Okay, I'll let you, I'll shut up and let you take it from here. Kathy.
Oh, no, don't do that. Mark. We're doing fine. So thank you very much for letting me jump into your meeting. I have been working with these communities in Rhode Island since late July. So we're getting up and getting going. And the idea behind the Shared Energy Manager program is that not all communities have an active sustainability committee where there's talent from the community who are willing to jump in and pitch in. First of all, wouldn't that be nice, right? And not all communities have a facilities manager like Mark, who is so well versed in energy efficiency. So they wanted to take advantage of a grant from the Department of Energy, which is funding this program, and make the services, my services, available to, we're starting with 5 communities in Rhode Island. And the idea is to meet you where you are. So if you are pretty far along in the energy efficiency world, like South Kingstown is, maybe there are things I can do to help you get further. If you are just beginning and need help with very basic things, I can do that as well. So that's sort of the idea. I've been working with South Kingstown, the schools in town is North Providence, the schools of Barrington, the town of Warren, and the town of North Smithfield so far. So those are the other communities in the mix. I can tell you a little bit about my background, if it helps. I started a consulting business actually back in 2003, which was just after my involvement with Boston Gas, right during the deregulation of natural gas, which occurred before electricity. So in Massachusetts. So I sort of was around when we were both all trying to figure it all out. I'm really old. I look really young, but anyway, it was quite the experience to be involved in deregulating energy in New England and trying to figure out how it was all going to work. At that point, the utilities didn't even really have a good feel for how things were going to work out. So I spent some time working as a procurement consultant for municipal customers, large public customers in Massachusetts. Did a lot of work for the MBTA. I did a significant amount of work for the city of Springfield, and focused a lot on supply, on that sort of area of how to buy energy and how to buy it competitively and how to procure it and what you need to be concerned about and that kind of thing. And then slowly started working more in the demand side. That's the natural progress. We procured a very large performance contract for the city of Springfield, which is actually in its 3rd phase and has been very successful for that city. And I worked with a number of other communities. And then in 2008, I left and decided to go to work actually on the vendor side. I worked for Johnson Controls and I focused on performance contracting in Rhode Island. So I was involved in large projects for East Providence and North Smithfield, and specifically for their school department, and had a great deal to do with their energy focus on their ride aspects of their projects. So I understand where you're coming from with respect to that aspect of those kinds of new school buildings and major renovations, and I get it. It's not easy, but there's some good things that they will give you if you are willing to go the extra mile. So then, spent some other time in some startups. I worked for Enernoc. I worked for some other types of companies, demand response, and then decided at that point was really much better versed to take my skills back to the municipal customer. And I feel that I have more to offer because I now understand a lot more of the demand side issues around energy management. So in November, I decided to do that. And I have 2 communities in Massachusetts I also work for. I work for Dartmouth and I work for Westport. So it's a great, I'm loving it. It's a great thing to do. I see a lot of different types of issues come and go. I have just finished, for the most part, a benchmarking exercise for all of your town buildings. And I just sent that report out to Mark. We still have a few little things to tweak before we're ready to share that report with you, but I'm sure we will be once Mark and I have a chance to sit down and look at it. I think that the news is very good. Most of your benchmarks are very, I would say that you are in as good of a position as you can be in for the vast majority of your town buildings. There's not going to be a lot more there. Typically, I'm seeing benchmarks running in around the 50s, 45 to 55 MBTUs per square foot per year in a building that's historic, made of granite, and built in 1867 or whatever. You know, I mean, at some point there's going to be a limit to what you can do. So I think you've been very successful, very interested in learning more about what the committee would like to do, what Mark would like to do in terms of future goals, and what I can do to help you meet them. So that's where I'm at.
Great.
That's great.
Kathy, will you be looking at things, or would you be involved in like the wastewater treatment plant and the power that's consumed over there?
Absolutely, that's on our list.
Okay.
I wanted to give Mark some feedback on just, you know, benchmarking efforts first before we kind of put a hit list together. And I also wanted to meet you folks and see what you guys sort of had in the back of your head. But yes, wastewater treatment is a very specific area of improvement, obviously, for many communities in Rhode Island. These plants are 40, 50 years old. Usually their operational improvements are being instituted to meet operational requirements frequently. And, but absolutely, we're doing a large HVAC comprehensive project at the Warren wastewater treatment plant right now.
Oh, sure.
And that's going really well over there. So yes, the answer is yes.
All right.
How were the 5 towns selected?
I think
I-
it was a matter of who wants to join kind of thing.
Oh, great.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, who wants to play, you know? I know we had one community back out, which was Situate, and that doesn't really surprise me. I mean, there was a full year that passed between the press release that said they were going to do this and they actually hired me.
Right.
So things change, you know, people have different plans and that kind of thing. So
That's great.
Kathy, this is Mark. Nice to meet you and welcome. I am wondering how long is the federal grant that is funding your position, and did the town of South Kingstown include any resources into that at the beginning?
So my time is paid for 100% by the grant for the entire program period currently. It is the hope of OER that I'll be just so amazingly successful that I'll be delivering money down here by the bucketful, and you guys will just have to think about, you know, keeping me on. But anyway, to answer your question, that program will be funded through January 22. And I know they're looking to extend that out a bit, because I think that we're pretty efficient here. I can get a lot done and without having to, and part of it I think is COVID too, but without having to spend a lot of time. So we might be able to stretch this program out a little bit longer. I did notice that you guys did a fabulous job on this aggregation. Both Dartmouth and Westport did an aggregation with Good Energy. And so I know what you're going through there, and it's an amazing thing to do for your constituents. And it's hard to describe to them if they're not well informed around these kinds of supply issues, what a good thing it is to be able to procure electricity for less money than what they can do with having a town's legal counsel vet that contract and giving you the option of securing more renewable. I mean, I just think it's a wonderful thing to do for the people.
Kathy,
who
which
live
of
here.
the other Rhode Island communities that you're working with are doing the aggregation, as far as you know? My
So
understanding is Barrington is, right?
yeah, and I don't work for, this is kind of strange, but I don't work for the town of Barrington, just the school department.
Oh, I see.
So I don't get involved in town issues. And you know how it is. Sometimes with communities, schools and towns are like two different worlds. And then sometimes, like North Providence, the same
Not here.
facilities director does both. So it just depends. I know Warren is not looking at it yet, but we'll take another look, I think, now. I certainly am going to see if I can't get them interested in taking another peek at this. I know
Forgive
when
me.
Providence did it already, right? I think, or somebody
In
one
the
of larger-
process, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you working with South Kingstown schools as well as the town, or just the town?
Not yet. It's
Okay.
something that's on the plate. Mark's thinking about it and looking into it, and I am certainly available to do that. So if and when he decides it's something we should be taking up with OER, I'm sure we'll do that.
Great.
Well, yeah, I think it started out, Angela, that I was on a Zoom call with Nathan Cleveland at OER, and Kathy. And we asked about using the schools as well, and he was a little standoffish about it. But if we're getting to the point with all the municipal buildings where we can't squeeze another BTU out of it, we might as well jump over to the schools, you know?
Right.
So it's a real possibility. So.
Great. I think that's excellent. I didn't know this was happening, but it's very cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Kathy, just one. So Nathan is who is managing that contract with
He's
you?
my contact. So
Okay,
Nathan
great.
and I speak every other week. We talk a lot. I try to keep him in my loop as much as I can. And he's an amazing resource. There's not enough good things to say about Nathan.
Yeah, great. And is there an expectation that you'll be interfacing with National Grid directly, or would that be in
Oh,
partnership with Mark?
Most
So-
definitely. Yeah, most
And-
definitely. So I have an intern who, it's not my intern, it's National Grid's intern, but I sort of took her over because, why not, right? So Lauren Hannah is our intern. We get to have her to the end of December, but she has access to all of National Grid's databases. So I can download all of your 2-year bill histories and bill copies and anything I need. Lauren is on that. She takes care of all that data. And then if I can get out and do a walkthrough of a facility or whatever, I'd like to bring her with me because it's good for her to get out in the real world and see what we're doing. And then Jerry Drummond, I've known Jerry since my days at Springfield. He worked for Siemens when they did the project there. So we go back 25 years. And so we talk a lot, and he is great at keeping me abreast of the kinds of things that are going on right now. I mean, there's a lot going on with respect to, for example, work being done in the school systems because of COVID to manage the 4 to 6 air exchanges an hour that are going to be required for these schools. There's controls work that folks are doing, and they're not aware that there's a lot of incentive money for that. So I'm trying to run around and get all my schools people to realize if you're doing controls work, it's possible that energy related points, I can get a $300 per point incentive. I mean, in 2 schools in North Providence, that's 50 grand. So, I mean, there's a lot of money that I need to be getting for these folks. So I am trying really hard to make sure I stay abreast of what Jerry's got going on because things are changing really fast. We're trying to pull a lot of money out of the incentive pool if we can, and other places to help fund some of these improvements that are going to be required, So far, a lot of those incentives are really kind of specific to K through 12, but not all of them. So I'll be talking to Mark about that and whatever we can do. But yeah, there's so much going on with respect to our utility partners.
Great. Yeah, I look forward to seeing more from you too.
Yeah, I'd like to join your meetings at least, at minimum quarterly or more often if possible, and just give you an update of what we're doing and get some ideas and see what you think.
That's great.
Right.
Any other questions, comments for Kathy at this time? Thank you for being here.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Kathy.
I'm gonna jump off and let you guys do your thing then, if that's
Welcome,
appropriate.
Kathy.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'll
Kathy.
Thank
I'll be
you.
in touch.
And if you need me, just yell at Mark and he'll yell at me and we'll,
We don't yell.
Got no problem yelling at Mark.
No.
in
Yeah,
a friendly
I'll be
way.
in touch with you. I'll be in touch, Kathy.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kathy. Very nice to meet you.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to move on to agenda item 7, discussion. Let's start with 7A, which is our community forum on climate change and getting to net zero.
Yeah, can I make a motion to push that back in the agenda and move Mike Murner up in
Yeah.
the agenda?
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Thanks.
Second.
Oh,
All right.
sorry, Jim. You're always second.
I always want to be first, though.
You're
Angela.
always for second.
We're all in favor? Aye.
All right.
Say it. It's a proper motion now. Okay. So yeah, let's jump to Mike Murner, who was nice enough to be here.
And Jane hiding there off to the side.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, I'm tech support. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jane.
Great group.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Mark.
Jane
Hi,
probably knows
everybody.
everyone.
I do. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm hiding, but I'm here for tech support.
This is my first Zoom ever.
Wow.
Hey, I'm going to put you in a breakout room real quick. You'll be fine.
Well, it's an honor.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking for our input on compost. We really believe in composting. And it ties right in. I just saw that your next agenda is climate change, and compost will tie into that big time because you sequester a lot of carbon in our soils by not sending the food scraps to the landfill where it creates methane. It's the opposite. When you compost it, you're going to be sequestering the carbon and building the soils. But anyway, I'll just answer questions or whatever you like.
Great.
Mike, why don't you, we had that, conversation, and maybe you describe some of the, your operation and then some of the legislative things that exist in Rhode Island at this time.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mike, before you do that, and I apologize, Jim, but Mike, I don't know you at all. Could you just quickly introduce yourself? I apologize.
Mike Murner, the founder of Earth Care Farm in Charleston. We've been composting over 40 years. My daughter is taking over management of the compost facility, the farm, and ownership of the farm. So she's more current than I am. We've been working with South Kingston for decades. 40 years ago, it was Butch Jenks that ran your transfer station, and Butch sent us all your leaves and wood chips back then before it was fashionable. And your town still brings us wood chips. And it's always been good because our biggest issue, I shouldn't say the biggest issue, but a main issue is on our inputs on the compostables that we do on the farm. We want no inorganic contaminants in them, besides no other contaminants. But the biggest thing with food scrap composting, that we're one of the few places in the state that does that, is that you need education to keep any inorganics out of it. Go ahead.
You might just want to say, we're Rhode Island's largest and oldest compost. And we make a really high quality compost. So it's really about bringing that back to soils, enlivening soils and enriching them. So it's quality is our big thing.
Yeah, not all composts are created equal.
We're here to keep the soil. Yeah.
So
Mike,
I'm not good at rambling on unless you have questions.
yeah,
Well,
Mike,
Mike,
maybe
you had talked about, due to the contamination issue, that your farm primarily only takes in pre-consumer
At
food.
this point, we're open. We want to encourage more composting, and the state has laws that no one's enforcing, but there's laws on the books that facilities, restaurants, colleges, hospitals, schools that produce large amount of food scraps are supposed to be sending them to compost facilities and not commingling it and sending it to the dump. Vermont, the state of Vermont just passed a law that composting is required of all food scraps, that nothing is allowed to go to the dump. But what Jim brought up is that our success in the past has been with what is called pre-consumer food scraps. In Rhode Island, the big one is the fishing industry. We get all the fish byproducts. And when Jim is mentioning some of the problems we've had, we are open to trying to work with schools that will do a good job of their source separation. But like we did a pilot program with Stop and Shop, and the managers swore to us that they would just send us their perishable food. But in actuality, what they sent was every head of lettuce had cling wrap on it. The watermelon had styrofoam trays. You got all those damn stickers on every piece of fruit. So that's all inorganics, and we don't want that in our compost, but possibly there's other sites that could make a lower grade compost to reclaim, like gravel banks and things like that. So it's we don't want to discourage you to move to getting your schools to compost. And if they had a good enough program and you started small with the younger kids that you could train, it would be something that is very doable and helpful for everybody.
Some South Kingstown businesses that do send their e-consumer.
Jane, we're having a
Okay.
hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay, I'm a little far. There are some South Kingstown businesses. Whalers brings their beer dredgings to us. I don't know what to call it exactly. And I think that might be over the line, but Dave's Coffee brings their coffee grounds. There's actually a couple of individuals, like there's someone from Monsignor Clark and someone from Peacedale School and Elementary and from Narragansett that were volunteer parents that brought food scraps to us. It hasn't started in September, but it was happening last year. So there's stuff coming from there already.
Yeah, and I think I think you have some households that probably hire Roadside Revival. They're a compost collection agency that brings the food scraps here. And it's assumed some of those households are from South Kingston also. Yeah. So, yes, they're people that pay attention and keep it clean.
Mm.
And Mike, could you speak to the concept of, I know one of the issues that we have also is treatment plant waste, I know, which can't be used for food grade compost, but do you have any inputs on that, or?
Well, that's out of our realm. You know, we're a certified organic farm that sells organic compost, and biosolids, sewage compost doesn't fit those parameters because of the pharmaceuticals and whatnot. And the big thing is relatively new. PFAS, what is it called? PFAS.
Yeah.
It's relatively new, but it's been a big issue because we thought when they started making the compostable cups and utensils and food packages that we'd be able to take in more food scraps. But ever since we read about this PFAS issue, we can't take in any, even though it says compostable on the cup, because of the waxy surface, we don't take that in. We don't want that in the compost. So that's an issue of packaging and manufacturing. As we're going to have more composting in the future, they just have to make those out of natural materials because they claim it's biodegradable, but that issue is a real nightmare in the compost world right now. And that's also, back to your question, Jim, that's in your sewage sludge biosolids also.
So Mike, hi, good to meet you. And my name is Mark Kravitz. So from my perspective on this conversation, and I think these conversations about sort of individual composting and school-based composting, those are essential to this conversation. We should be thinking about that as a sustainability committee. I think that's really important. And certainly the larger level of municipal waste as far as it relates to wastewater treatment plants and multiple towns coming together to try to figure that out. I think that's an important conversation. From my perspective, though, one of the conversations we've had previously in this committee was focusing on an economic analysis that was completed in the 80s, and essentially making an argument that it wasn't economically feasible for composting to take place at a town level. And as a result of that, we asked for a copy of that report, which we haven't been able to find. And so we're now moving into the place of maybe it's time to do a new economic analysis of whether or not it's feasible to start composting at a town scale. And that would be looking at available land for composting, et cetera. And I guess the main question for me is, if there was sort of a centralized composting facility, just say theoretically, from your perspective and from your experience, how would that look? And from your perspective, would you see any sort of major barriers that would occur based on sort of a town level composting system? And I'm assuming you've come across towns that are doing composting at a full town level. And do you have some examples of where that is working well that we could learn more about?
The towns in Rhode Island, all they compost, from what I've seen, is yard materials, leaves, grass, and brush. They've been limited to that. So if you were thinking about a real facility that is going to take in your food scraps, siting is an issue. Our site is next to hundreds of acres of Nature Conservancy, thousands of acres of great swamp, and the prevailing winds come from the southwest. So we've been doing it for 40 years with very little issues. Most compost facilities have that not in my backyard problem. Other people have that were dedicated to the idea of composting in Rhode Island have started facilities, and as soon as they have the slightest odor issue, they get a cease and desist. So it's siting would be very important, knowing which way the prevailing winds are, what the buffers are around you, that type of thing. If you're going to get involved with food scraps, what's called putrescibles. If you're just going to stick with, and I hope you don't just take your leaves and wood chips, because they're coming to us now. But if you were going to have your own facility and just do yard materials, that can be done. That can be done.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mark, who was the person that came to our meeting previously about the composting, and he was more pitching sort of the site composting?
Engineer.
The engineer, yes. Be interesting to have him talk with Mike about.
What was he advocating for?
They were sort of like standalone, small composting, almost like containerized compost facilities that would be on on an individual site.
Yeah, that's in vessel. That's very expensive and limited to your capacity. I mean, you could have small compost operations at each individual school, possibly, if you had dedicated staff. And it takes a little bit of equipment. Again, it takes the pad, the payloaders, the screeners. It takes equipment.
Mike,
Yes.
if you were to think of our whole town where would you invest in composting? Schools, facilities, at a town level, a location? What would be your advice or guidance to our town?
My daughter is smarter than I am on that issue. I'm going to pass that
All
question
right,
to
Jane,
Jane.
have at it.
I would say probably the smartest thing would be to start in the elementary schools with real education and really actually kind of bringing that into the curriculum for the students. That's the best way I've seen it work, is when it's really ingrained in there. As soon as you pawn it off on one person at a school and then they leave, the system falls apart very quickly. It has to be just something like Angela and I grew up with recycling, and it's no big deal to us. We're going to always do that. We did it in school. We might not have even done it at home. It might have started in school, and now that's a thing. So that would be the best way to do it. I know from talking to the Johnston landfill that their composting program does not make money. It's a losing battle up there, and it's junk compost. So that's like the other issue. They have a hard time getting rid of it. So it might not be the best thing to put all your eggs into starting a compost facility, but if you did it at school, small scale, and even had the composting there on site, I think that would be a great way to go about it.
Cool. And one other question. So you know the compost plant up in Providence?
Mhm.
So what do you think they're doing well, and what should we be thinking about if we're doing similar down here in South County?
So they're just a trucking company now. They've had 2 failed composting sites. They just had a cease and desist at their last one. But their good thing has been they're picking up food scraps and really educating the kitchens and cafeterias about what can go into that bin. And then they bring it now to a facility in Massachusetts. So they've struggled a lot with siting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So figuring out siting is going to be a really important thing to do.
Really important, and educating really educating. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll just add additional context. And I think I read a statistic that, Americans waste about a pound of organic material a day, of food a day. And, I'm concerned personally about, Central Landfill's website, recognizing that by 2034, that landfill is going to be filled. And, tipping fees are going to be astronomical. We're going to be paying that. And, especially if we start shipping a lot of our waste out of state. And I just feel that it's essential for us to begin making a game plan with that in mind. And that is not a lot of time. We are coming up quick to 2034. 14 years is not a lot of time to make big plans for something like this. And I think we need to get on it right now. And I think you're right. Your vision on the schools is essential, but I also think the economic feasibility plan is key to start laying out a pathway forward for the next 14 years so that we're not in a position of those rates going up so high for us, especially with 33,000 pounds of food a day going into that landfill, just from our town.
I have 2 more cents to add to what you're saying. Most of the state's yard materials are going to the central landfill for free. And our biggest hurdle is that we have a hard time getting enough of that yard material or carbon to balance the food scraps, which are more nitrogen based. And I really think that you need someone very skilled, like my dad, or with making compost to oversee if Johnston was to then start taking food scraps with all that carbon they already have not the best quality compost. So if there's issues in the beginning with stickers on fruit or something like that, it's not going to throw the system totally out of whack. But that wouldn't be that hard to do. They've already got the odors from the landfill right there. So, but they would need someone very skilled to get that underway, because there's a lot to it, the science of it. But that's another thought.
I agree with Jane. I agree, Jane, with that. And that's been my thought, is that why would we want to initiate this when there is a facility that exists that could, as time goes on, is going to have to be modified if there is no longer going to be space to dump. You know, it's going to be in their advantage to do that. And I don't see that the town of South Kingstown, I mean, after having lived here for 40 something years, the town, you know, does things that saves the town money. And since we don't have a municipal trash pickup service, the household trash is not an issue that impacts the town's budget. It's the other municipal buildings that do. So I think that in regards to household trash, I think a program just like with the kids and recycling is to get people to start doing it at home on their own. And I think a strong educational program there will help people. I'm not a person who's really against high tipping fees, because sometimes that's the only way you get people to change their behavior, is when things start to cost them more money. And for the town, I think that you know, looking into you know, us and maybe other communities trying to pressure the landfill to start becoming more proactive on this issue.
I'm just curious if you could share any successful town examples around the country or even out of this country that we could learn more about and get a better understanding of successful projects.
Bristol, Bristol, Rhode Island composts. And then Fairfield, Connecticut runs a really nice composting program. Just a couple things. I think it's a bigger discussion, but on the biosolids, right now, about 40% of our biosolids just from SK go to the landfill. So we're dumping that right in the landfill and paying those tipping fees, which are going up tremendously. The other 60% goes to incineration right now. So just huge volumes going there. That's why I think we need to look at the biosolids. And then the PFAS is definitely an issue, but there's equipment out now that can handle the PFAS. I happen to sell it for a living, but that's besides the point. But a well-designed composting train can keep the high quality stuff separate from the garbage. And, you know, I think it needs to be explored on a much bigger basis. I think everything that everybody has said ties into it. My honest opinion is the town should be doing the collections of the trash, and that the trash should be in the tax base, not separate. But this goes on and on and on. I think this is all good information, but I think there's a whole lot more moving pieces and puzzles here that we need to look at.
Yeah. So on that note, Mark Russo, we had talked about presenting the concept of an economic study to the town council. And I think first we wanted to hear from Mike and from other local experts and get their perspective. I mean, it sounds to me like that would be beneficial. There's a lot of dynamics to this conversation that it would be helpful for the town to get its mind around on many fronts, from climate and sustainability all the way down to purely economics. What would be the process for presenting that at this point, if everyone on this committee was comfortable with us presenting that idea to the council at some point?
Well, I think you would need to have some sort of a plan, which way you're going. Just, I would say that if you went to the town council and said, hey, we want to start a composting thing, they'll ask you, well, how do you plan to do it? And how much is it going to cost? So I think, you know, we should come up with a plan first and then present it to the town manager, and then he would fine tune it to present it to the town council. November, it's the face of the council is going to change with the two members not running. So it may be more accepting of it, or it may not be. I mean, we don't know at this moment. So I would say a plan is first. Something you would, I don't know, how would we do it? And I would absolutely bring up the fact that, in 14 years, they're going to be stuffed in Johnston. And what are you going to do with it? So we got to do something about it now. We got to start now. We can't wait until, you got 5 years left and then it's too late. So I would bring that up to them as well. And maybe that's a community thing as well. It's got to get it out there. So I would say a plan is the first thing.
Mark, you're suggesting redoing the economic analysis prior to plan development.
Yeah.
Correct?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen the economic analysis, so I don't know what it entails and what it included, whether or
Lost.
not it was strictly looking at developing something on site in South Kingstown or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think I would want, from my perspective, to hire an expert who has done a massive literature review of towns and municipalities who have integrated compost successfully into their towns across the country or internationally, that can help lay out a framework for us as a town. And then whether that entity can do the analysis or not, but maybe them and another entity to look at our own town and our population and sort of where things are moving in the next 14 years and start putting some numbers down as to what, projections at what we can be looking at for our needs in the town. So we could certainly lay out the issues, and in the conversations that Jim and Chris and I had, I saw 3 tiers of individuals and working with them individually, town-wide, and then these larger multi-town initiatives that would affect us, sort of this 3-tiered level. But I would be making the pitch to put some funds together to do this analysis in preparation for that 14 years. I feel like we have enough to make an economic and sustainability focused argument for pulling someone in to do this more comprehensive analysis, or at least lay out for us, frame it all out for us. Because I'm not sure if we have the time and capacity to do that as a committee.
Maybe getting some budget quotes on engineering studies would be a good thing. You know who might be really good, Mark? Fuss and O'Neill, who did the BMP work for the Narrow River stuff, has a whole branch that does sustainability and composting and all those kinds of things. They may be able to at least rough out what a engineering study would cost to do this review.
Yeah, and I just want to say, engineering is part of it. I'm not sure if that's phase 1 or phase 2, but really someone to lay out what the possibilities are. And I would make a strong recommendation that that review committee includes Mike Murner on that review committee for that, in choosing that entity who would come and do that sort of compost analysis and framing work. And then I think secondly, it's the economic analysis piece. And again, if we can integrate that into one, that would probably be ideal, but it might be this first step of getting someone, and I don't think it's huge dollars. I think it's really getting someone to help us frame this out for our town.
I think it might be worth reaching out to the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, and I'd be happy to do that. I'm actually on the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, but they seem to have a lot of just resources for kind of the things we're talking about. And food waste is one of the biggest issues with that.
Is it Greg Garrett that runs the compost show?
Conference.
Yeah.
It's an annual conference.
Yeah.
Is Leo Pollock still? I'm sorry, is Leo Pollock still the chair of the council?
No, he's not on the council anymore.
Okay.
My recommendation, since you mentioned you have 14 years, is start with the kindergarten kids, the first grade and second grade, and have somebody teach them how to source separate. And if it's clean, until you have another facility, you could bring it here. The back of our property, our farm boundary is the South Kingston, Charleston town line.
We're 5 miles from Rose Hill landfill.
Yeah.
So,
So
very
we're
close.
No,
very close.
And,
We're very
I'm sorry.
close.
I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn a little bit. I think the high quality stuff that you guys could turn into a saleable product, by all means, should continue to go to you guys. Absolutely. But I do think we're missing a big opportunity for I'll call it the second class stuff for, land reclamation. They sell a lot of that stuff for mining, covering up old mines and pit reclamation and roadside stuff, where it doesn't have to be the purity for gardens that you guys are producing. So I see it as very synergistic, not as opposing businesses.
I think too is the state used to put out brochures about composting in your backyard. And Sucking sounds a perfect spot for backyard composting. It's amazing when people start doing that, they realize how little goes into the trash. So
Yeah.
I think the Food Policy Council is a good resource and a good place to start. Where we
Is there anyone on the policy council that you recommend would be a great starting point to talk to?
yeah, so I would say Nessa Richmond, who's a South Kingstown resident, and she's the executive. I forget her title. I think it's executive
I
director.
think she's executive director. Yeah.
Yeah, Nessa Richmond would be great, and I'd be happy to share anything or second that or anything as a policy member as well.
That's great.
Dinosaur with the computer, but if you want my phone number, if any questions pop up, give me a phone call.
Ready when you are.
Yeah.
742-9449. 742-9449.
We're going to assume that's a 401 area code.
Oh, yes.
I was going to say, spoken like a true Rhode Islander.
Mike, on that, and Jane, on that roadside revival, I went on their website and it seems they do institutions also. Is that something which they'd be worthwhile us having in to speak to or do a Zoom with?
Absolutely, yeah. They pick up organics, so they're pretty good with making sure it's clean. They've got a good list of what can go in and what can't.
Okay.
Well, this has been really helpful for me, and thank you. I feel like this took us a step forward as this committee to help frame this out, and we're getting warmer. We're getting closer each time. So thank you, and thanks for all that you do for South Kingstown and taking all those scraps and turn it into gold. So really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
See
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, Jim.
Yeah, bye,
Everybody
Mike.
else is right.
Hi, Jane.
Night.
Good night.
See ya.
Jim, you can bring your friends anytime.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that are presentable.
Oh, great. That was helpful.
That's awesome.
We are not just an energy related committee. Good reminder there.
We're energy creating committee.
I was
Okay.
trying to find real quick, just to put an order of magnitude around it. I think we're paying, don't hold me to this, I can't find the numbers, but just SK is paying something in the neighborhood of $1.5 million a year to the landfill to throw our biosolids in there.
The town of South Kingstown pays that?
Yep.
Is that for, forgive me, am I? don't know about
Disposal of the solids that come out of the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay. Wow.
So
It's a lot of money.
somewhere resource recovery posts all of those exact numbers, but it's big numbers.
Right.
Mark Russo, can we start our conversation with the town manager of just 14 years and 1.5 million as our two opening arguments to say we should maybe think about this more seriously?
I'll throw it on his desk and see where it goes from there, because we're coming into budget season, so if you're gonna do it, I would do it sooner than later.
Let me confirm those numbers to you, Mark, before you send it to him. I'll dig out I did a calculation one time of what we're sending to resource recovery and what we're sending to incineration, and then roughly the amount of tonnage of trash that we send up to resource recovery every year, and what percentage of it is organic. So that gives you rough numbers of what the whole area is disposing. I will find those.
Yeah, and I feel like we've talked about this before. Does anybody know our current tipping fee for our town?
115 a ton for the biosolids anyway.
Right.
I think we're paying around 100 for trash.
For trash. All right. So, sorry.
But then what Mike talked about with the acreage is a significant factor, because even, I think it was last week I came down Warden's Pond Road and the wind was not blowing in his favorable condition. And it was, a distance away from his farm, and you could smell it. So to try to find that size acreage in South Kingstown to operate a facility, I think would be questionable at best.
Maybe we do it at his farm and keep the organic stuff separate from the inorganic stuff and let him run the whole operation for the town.
Well, I'm sure that he'd be willing to do that. It would just, the biosolids would have to be another issue that would be dealt somewhere.
Yeah. And there is odor control equipment that can be put on this stuff nowadays. The new equipment out there is pretty incredible, but I digress. I'm kind of way ahead of myself here.
Here's a question. Does the town own the land that the transfer station is on?
I would suspect they do. I think we just get into a contract with, we take bids
Someone
and,
take it.
yeah.
Hmm.
The old days, it used to be a town employee would oversee the dump. And then that changed with the transfer station.
Right.
Yeah, the old days, Angela, you used to back up to a cliff and just throw your
Yeah.
stuff off the back of a truck.
Oh yeah, is that right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
people would be taking as much stuff out as they were throwing in.
Yeah.
The chair, come on.
It's funny.
Yep, that was the days.
All right, so here's the whole train of.
And the other thing I had mentioned to both Mark and Chris was some simple potentially signage to direct people to a website at the transfer station. If we could get either whether it's something you scan on your phone that would then take you to a site that explains home composting. Something, not a sign that someone's going to have to sit there and read, something that has 10 words on it and a scannable area, I don't know what you'd call it, me being a Luddite, but potentially try to get, people moving in that direction. So
Interested in that, yeah.
So people don't have to ship stuff someplace else. It's most of this can be done on somebody's property, and people, and the thing when I give talks and stuff, and I always bring up people, emphasizing composting. It's something that people are very, very apprehensive about, because most of the literature makes it seem like it's a science project where it's just happening in nature. You throw the stuff on a pile, you turn it once a year or whatever, and you have compost. It's really not that difficult. And somehow if we could do something like that, and it would require some money on the part of the town to get a program like this or some information like this out there. But I think it would be beneficial to homeowners, and it would at least start to cut into that part of the equation.
Yeah, I'll just add sort of, if my calculations are correct, at 33 at a pound per person per day, at $100 per ton of waste. Our food waste accounts for about $600,000 of our trash fees each year, give or take, however much. But I think together with our biosolids and whatnot, we're talking, just under $2 million a year for our town on tipping fees alone.
And that's not including restaurants and grocery stores.
Right.
It's just residential.
Exactly.
Wow. There's an argument there.
Yeah, I just found my numbers. We're and it's gone up from when I did this, but we're over $500,000 a year in disposal costs for just the biosolids.
Wow.
So, Mark, what's the timeline for the budget process? When's budget due?
You're
You're on
muted.
mute, Mark.
Wrong, Mark.
Oh, like, what? What are you talking? I just answered you. January, I believe, is when it's due to the town manager, and then they have all their budget meetings and so forth. So we're coming up on it. It's usually December is when we start to roll that out. We just got the paperwork and the email last Friday, so it's time to start looking at it.
So, Mark, how would that work if we made a proposal? Does that go through somebody, a budget of a department, or how does that get fit into?
Yeah, it would have to go through the town manager because he ultimately, the buck stops with him. So, yeah, there's no department that has, budgetary funds for I guess, to do any studies or anything like that. It would have to come from the town council and their discretionary fund that they have. I think, I'm not speaking for them, but I'm not sure. That's up to the town manager. So if if you wanted to schedule a meeting or to sit down with him, maybe your subgroup, and then discuss it, see where he wants to go with it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Maybe Jim, Chris, and I could schedule a meeting with him, with your help, Mark. Jim, you take the individuals, I'll take the town conversation, and Chris takes the aggregate larger conversation.
Sounds good to me.
That's delegation right there.
Nice.
Nice. Seems like a good next step just to see kind of where Rob is with sort of how he reacts to this, and if it's, I don't know, I wouldn't be able to guess how he would feel about this project. So I think
Only one way to find out, right?
Right.
Go for it.
I just have one quick question on all of this. I've been tight-lipped because we are running out of time, and I'm hoping we'll get a little bit of time to talk about the community forum.
Let's
But
do it.
when Mark Kravitz and I interviewed for the Sustainability Committee back in January, was it, Mark? Or December, maybe. Anyway, the question we were both asked at the time was, do we have any thoughts about, waste? What was the term, Mark, that Able Collins used?
Yeah, it was pretty, I don't remember the term, but it was really about, a waste management plan and specifically
so
composting.
What I've been thinking ever since, especially in light of the conversation we've had tonight, and all of the concern that's been expressed about this is, I mean, is it a fait accompli that in 14 years, there's not going to be anything replacing the central landfill, and that municipalities in Rhode Island really are going to be that much more responsible, at the local level for all of this? Or does anybody know?
So Mark, I will respond. I'll read you their website. It's on the front of their website, right? And it says
Resource recovery specifically? Okay.
Yeah. And it says, at current loading rates, the central landfill will reach capacity in 2034 when the landfill closes. And it gives us options. One, we can find another city or town to build a landfill. No city, town is jumping at this, exclamation point.
Yeah.
Two, attempt to expand the current facility. This would be expensive and will require land acquisitions and wetlands relocations. Three, ship it out of state, expensive. And four, incinerate. We are currently prohibited from this by Rhode Island law. So it's right on their website as the four options right now that they're entertaining.
Yep.
Okay.
And they're also, it's a whole interesting thing, just the way they have to operate right now. Just their overhead costs of what it takes to run the thing. The whole operation has to be subsidized to keep all of our trash rates right now are artificially low just so that they can operate the place. So they're constantly running this balance of taking enough in to make up the difference between that funding difference versus not taking too much in to keep this magic 14-year number that seems to really never change in the residents and political officials' minds. It's a really interesting dynamic when this thing comes down. The whole Northeast is and disposal is a house of cards, and it's just waiting for the first to blink. Probably getting way into more than anybody cares right now, but I also sit on the Northeast Biosolids and Residuals Association Board of Directors. And so we interface with all of the haulers and all of the landfills and all of the compost manufacturers and users and generators and stuff. And we are in a world of hurt right now. These rates are going to skyrocket like nobody can imagine in the next few years.
Thank you.
I just want to say, Chris, I feel like every time we talk, you say a new committee or something that you're part of. I don't know where you find the time, but
Yeah, hence my smirk and giggle.
Well, that one I actually do during the work day, and it directly benefits what I do for a living, and it's all the people that I work with anyway. So that one doesn't actually take any time from the family. So that one I can get away with pretty easily.
on the clock. Okay, I think that was great. I think we should move on to the forum, talking about the community forum on climate change and getting to net zero. Is that okay with everybody? Move on? Yep. Great.
So I hope to move this forward in a September meeting. That didn't happen. So I felt a sense of urgency to connect with members of the approved subcommittee to plan for this event. And so I think it was last Wednesday, it might have been 2 weeks ago, Angela and Tony and I met briefly, and we agreed on a date and time for this. I'm not sure if the entire committee here has to approve that, but we all agreed that January 13th, which is a Wednesday afternoon, evening, would work well for a Zoom community event from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Since our meeting last Wednesday, the four original panelists, including the moderator, who I have had in mind for this and have mentioned to all of you, have confirmed their commitment to do this. So now the the next step in my mind is to schedule some kind of serious planning meeting for the event itself with at least the moderator, Kevin O'Neill, and possibly some of the speakers, panelists, if they can make it, and the members of the subcommittee, Tony and Angela, if they can make it. And Mark, you tell me, Mark Russo, if all of that is within what is allowable and possible on this committee to have some kind of a planning meeting to sort of finalize what we intend to do, the structure of this event, and the focus, to the extent we haven't really honed in on that yet, et cetera. I'm looking at an early November meeting of some kind, which would obviously be a Zoom meeting, because I'd like to have all of this completely firmed up by the November Sustainability Committee meeting, including a plan to market the event, and what the language of any either press release or marketing materials that we share with people through whatever channels, and have a really strong sense of how it's going to play out, how it's going to be facilitated in Zoom, what the role of the panelists will be, how we'll use breakout rooms and all that kind of thing.
Mhm. Well, I think that as long as it's just the 3 members of the subcommittee and it's not you don't have a quorum there, because I don't believe that the speakers and the presenters that you would have part of that meeting, that doesn't go towards a quorum because they're not voting members on their committee.
Got
So I
it.
think you'd be
Sure.
fine with that. So.
Is that something you would like to be involved in, Mark, or?
I mean, at the moment, I'm just so straight out. You have unbelievable. Just every day gets busier.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I appreciate it, but
I would like to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, obviously, as well as who's, I don't know if you're in the pond there, Tony, or on the bike, or.
comes up with a mask on, we know there's a problem.
I'm swimming, but I'm in.
Okay.
I hear you. I'm just eating.
Oh,
Eating.
Does anybody have
I'm
any
still riding
questions?
my bike to keep the internet going in my house.
Does anybody have any questions or comments about focus of this event, which still is kind of at the global level right now? I haven't really thought in too fine a manner about the extent to which we can make this a South Kingstown focused event when it is about climate change as a starting point. So I'm open to ideas, thoughts, etc.
The previous talks that you've done, they given people some, at least direction or some information as to how to move forward with this to help facilitate this? That would be something I would hope would be contained.
Yeah, that's really, I think, the overarching goal, Jim, is to, when Tony saw the press release, the blurb on the earlier event that we did at Rhode Island College, he immediately, I think, fine-tuned and revised the language of it because he felt it was a little too gloom and doom as written. And that's not the intent. Needless to say, the intent is to give people a sense that there are steps that all of us can be taking to mitigate climate change. There are steps, and in fact, I think an important piece of this is the role that Professor Rudolf Krauss will be playing as somebody who is an educator and a climate educator specifically in the School of Education. I'm hoping that we can get some enthusiastic participation from school teachers, from the schools, from the school committee even, not to mention the school building committee, as part of this, because I continue to believe, this is my personal feeling, and in line with what Jim Merman, is that his name? I'm sorry, the gentleman who was with us earlier,
Mike Berta?
Mike Murner, I'm sorry. His emphasis and his daughter's emphasis on beginning composting with kindergartners, amen. And I say the same thing about climate change education. If the schools can be getting much more engaged in figuring out how to teach climate change at a young age, and needless to say, other aspects of sustainability. I don't know the extent it's happening. I don't know the extent it's in the standards, but I sense that we have a long way to go. It hasn't historically been nearly the priority that it should be in the standards and what's expected year to year as kids go through school. So, again, a big part of what this will be, the panel itself and the panel presenters talking about their expertise, their experience, what they're doing. That's a relatively small part of what this is likely to be. And breakout rooms, once we figure that out, who's doing what, will be an opportunity to generate, some ideas, some suggestions, etc. And then hopefully the goal would be to be able to distribute that to attendees and others. What comes out of this? I'm hoping that there will be some great ideas. That's kind of what I have in mind for this.
Great. I like your idea about a planning meeting to sort of dive into the details. So what might be helpful is some sort of goals or outline for that conversation with the speakers, just so we have a direction in that meeting. But I like the timeline too. Early November nail it down by our November meeting.
Yeah, because that'll give us about 6-7 weeks max to get the word out, and then moving towards the date of the event. I think it would be too late, needless to say, to wait until the December meeting to really finalize this. My timeline for getting the word out about events tends to be 5 weeks minimum. So I think, November, whatever the date is, day before Thanksgiving, is that right? We're all gonna meet day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday before Thanksgiving, okay. That's that would be a good timeline in my mind, to have this completely firmed up.
With COVID, 2 days is good. Just kidding. I like the idea. Let's get our November meeting. Let's play around with the design so that it's more interactive and engaging, similar to past forums, with a goal of not only getting the brilliant people that are sharing their thought bubbles, but engaging the community that's there with us in breakouts to get their ideas as well around some very specific, tangible things that they want to contribute to.
And I'll just say one more thing. I mean, I think we all agreed that, and it is 7:30, isn't it? That 4 panelists, including a moderator, is enough for something like this. But I at least want to remain open to the possibility that somebody else might participate. I mean, Kathy, for example, who was here earlier, may be a really great resource. And I'd certainly like to encourage her participation, for example.
Yeah, someone to, we had talked about bringing someone in to localize it.
Right, right.
That might.
And there is one South Kingstown resident who's been a resident for Mark Russo. I think you know Kevin Vidmar from Lorero Associates. He's a certified energy manager and an engineer. He's about to retire, but he's been doing this forever, and he's been doing it globally. At major industrial level and around the country, etc. But I also think we should have the local level municipality wise as well.
Right, what is South Kingstown doing?
Yeah, yeah,
What
absolutely.
things are we considering? Yeah. I don't know, Tony's our event guy. Are 5 people on a panel plus a moderator too many, Tony?
Yes.
Well, this would be 4.
know.
Right now, we have 3 plus the moderator. But
Oh,
Perfect.
okay.
I'm saying we might expand to 4.
I
Perfect.
see. Okay.
Again, as long as we're engaging the participants with their ideas and not just being
Talking at people.
exactly. As long as we do that, we're good. And finding the balance, like I mean, when we did the cocktails and conversations about the economy, not part of this group, but it was like 4 framers at 5 minutes each, and then like 10 1-minute pitches to get a sense of it. So that's like still contained within like a 20-minute period. So you can have more. It's just thought bubbles and then quickly engaging everyone in a different conversation.
Yeah, and I would say nobody would agree with that idea more than Kevin, the moderator.
Nice.
So Mark D, maybe next step is setting up that early November meeting.
Yeah.
I can make
And-
myself available.
Just want to warn you guys, Kevin O'Neill has told me, because his business is extremely crazy these days, that he wouldn't be able to do anything before 6:30 in the evening on weekdays or at some point on the weekends. Tony, I know you said weekends don't tend to be.
Evenings are fine.
Okay.
I don't have anywhere to go these
Neither
days.
do I. So great. I'll be in touch, guys.
Very good.
Great. Thank you.
I'm going to move on because in the interest of time. Agenda item 7D, there is an executive order that I don't know anything about. That the plastic bag ban has expired?
Yeah,
Or
Jim,
will not be extended?
Jim had asked me about that. And I looked it up. So that's why I put it on the agenda here, Jim,
Yeah.
is that the bag ban, as you know, was suspended right at when the emergency order for COVID came out from the town council. Because they went to the paper bags, went back to the plastic bags, excuse me. But now we're back to just paper bags. If you see anybody using a plastic bag in any store or whatever, they're breaking the rules. So just so you know.
I read that wrong.
Yes, I
The
did too. I had to get,
suspension of
yes,
the ban was expired. Okay,
Yes.
that's
I had to get that as well from the town manager's office. It was confusing, but
Okay.
yes,
I was
we
ready
are
for
back
a fight.
to paper bags only.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that, Mark.
Okay.
Okay, we'll all be spies around town. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Number 8, town activities update, OBR.
Yeah, we're pretty much wrapping it up as far as town buildings go and doing any on-bill repayment through lighting upgrades and energy upgrades. I know that with the new CFO in the school department, Mary Ann Crawford left and went to Block Island to be town manager. They have a meeting with the new CFO to discuss the large programs in the schools, which are not only lighting, but motors and drives and controls and so forth. That's coming up, I think, this week or early next week. So Jerry Drummond will be there and Chris from Energy Conservation Incorporated. I'm not sure if Kathy will be there or not, but so they're moving forward with those large plans at the schools that are not being touched by the school facility upgrade program. So anyway, that's where we are with that.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Mark R. Okay, next meeting, number 9. Do we need to?
Well, I'm just gonna write it
Discuss.
down because I have to put it on my calendar. That would be the 16th of November,
Okay,
third Monday.
That's what I've got.
Okay,
yep. 6 o'clock.
sure.
And Mark, do we talk about the design there or try to combine efforts? I'm just trying to think of, Kevin's going to be the moderator. Is that the thing? And how do we blend his role of moderator with our role of bringing this to the town and having it more like a community forum? So that I'm just trying
Yeah,
to figure out
I
that.
think you'd be happy to join us if we invited him as a guest to, and I think that's a great idea, Tony. I do, however, feel like it would make sense to have an earlier meeting than that, just
Sure.
to, again, kind of get grounded in what exactly we're doing, and then maybe present that to this larger committee on the 16th with Kevin O'Neill as a guest. I'll email him tomorrow morning and see if he can join us, if everybody's okay with
Perfect.
that.
Could I just add a couple of things that maybe for just brief discussion at the next meeting? One of
No.
them is after having read a lot of the bio from the different town council candidates, it seems like when it comes down to water, it was kind of this drill baby drill kind of mentality, and it didn't seem very sustainable as to what some of the candidates were saying we should do to address some sort of our water problems that we have due to water bans, et cetera, in the town. So we could, as an extension of our composting and our concern about that, I think water is equally as important. So we could, not that it was something we could probably work on right away, but it'd be something I think maybe at least to start a discussion on water conservation and other forms of conservation in the town like that, sustainable landscaping, etc. And the other thing is that we had talked about a while back was creating some form of dashboard like Providence had created, and maybe with this with information like in regards to the composting and our trash usage and energy usage in the schools. This might be something that we may want to revisit and think about going forward to try to work on something like that.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you brought it up. I think Kathy would probably have.
Yep.
I mean, she's like the data master.
Mhm.
So I think she'd probably be a good resource.
Yep. Okay. I just want to bring those things up.
Great. Anything else?
I just want to say on the record this time, because I know I brought it up after the meeting, after we adjourned last time, but I will be talking with Sue Anderbaugh from Providence about how we could better coordinate among various sustainability committees around the state. That has not happened. Sue and I have been trying to connect, but just
Mark, do you know how many communities, how many municipalities even have sustainability committees?
I think that's part of the process. I have no idea.
Okay.
But Sue, she and I talked about this months ago, was under the impression that there are a few.
Does Providence have a committee or a staff?
It's a committee and they have staff.
Great.
Yeah, I have both.
Wow. Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about that because I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Anything else? On the
So
record?
did Hannah have a baby?
She did. She had a
Cool.
girl.
A girl?
Girl.
Fantastic.
Name?
I
Don't
don't
know?
know.
Okay.
I wonder
We'll
if she
grill her
put it
next
on.
time.
I wonder if she put it online, but yeah.
Oh, great.
All right, we can stop recording. Meeting is adjourned. It's 7:41 p.m.
Make a
You don't
motion.
You don't have to motion, I just have to call it.
Oh, great. Those are
You
the
don't have to
best.
go home, but you can't stay here.
We're coming over to go kayaking, Tony.
Yes.